The annual legislative conference is 53 years old. This is our 53rd annual conference. And this is an opportunity for all of Black America, and in fact, all of America, to come together and talk about those issues that are most salient to the Black community. And we know that issues that impact the Black community impact all of America. All of those issues right now, economics, closing the Black wealth gap, dealing with disparities, housing, all of those issues are the most prescient issues right now for Black America. This is a time for everyday citizens to come to our conference, to stand next to members of Congress, to hear from them in panel discussions, to ask them questions, to stop them in the hallways, to tell them what's going on in their own communities. And that's why we exist. That's why we do this conference, because we believe that every individual person should be empowered to talk about what is happening in their communities and to impact and be empowered by their own communities and by the work that they are doing. So again, as you said, I love that you said this is not about whether you're an R or a D, whether you're purple, green, blue, or yellow. This is about individuals coming together, having an opportunity to hear from their elected officials and having an opportunity to question them, but also make recommendations about what they want to see, the kinds of changes they want to see in their own backyards.
Well, that's a productive conversation, and I'd like to get specific with you about legislative priorities here. But knowing that you were at a watch party, a CBC watch party, looking at that debate on Tuesday, did either candidate bring plans that resonate with Black voters and the people you're talking to today?
Well, I can't speak for all Black voters. The Black community is not monolithic. What I can say is that both candidates spoke to issues that are of concern to the Black community, and again, that are of concern to Americans writ large. They talked about the economy, they talked about immigration, they talked about housing, they talked about education, artificial intelligence, all of those things that to everyday average Americans is going to impact how they live, breathe, eat, sleep, how they take care of their families, how they take care of their communities. I think those were issues that everyone in this country has an obligation to be focused on, has an obligation to be thinking critically about, and has an obligation to then think thoughtfully about as they go into the ballot box in November and make their choices, their personal choices that they think are going to be most beneficial to them and their families.
Well, you just said a lot there, and I find it interesting that we're talking about AI as part of this conversation as well. Maybe AI is part of the kitchen table conversation. Nicole, you tell me, because Washington's trying to get its arms around this technology right now, and there is a civil rights aspect to this, isn't there?
Yes, absolutely. And AI is something we're talking about here at the annual legislative conference. We have over 100 sessions, and some of those sessions are specifically looking at AI. The thing that's interesting about AI is, and like all technology, it is often created to ensure a benefit to all of us, but there are often unintended consequences. And particularly when we're talking about technology that can really get into our hearts and homes, that has the ability to survey our movements, and in fact, to help create our thoughts. That's something that we all should be concerned about. And we know that AI is seen in every aspect, in every crucial system of our country, whether we're talking about our monetary system, whether we're talking about our voting system, whether we're talking about how we do our work each and every day. So it's incumbent upon us as the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation and the members of the CBC that are leaders here in the country to talk about those issues and to talk about what's going to impact and change how people live each and every day, and how can they ensure that their rights are protected, how can they ensure that their voices are heard. And AI is certainly at the heart of that.
Well, Nicole, this is a big deal to our viewers and listeners, many of whom are investing a good deal of capital in this technology right now and trying to figure out if there will be a regulatory answer to what has been incredibly fast growth here. Will the CBC make this a priority in this Congress?
You'd have to talk to the individual members themselves. The individual members, of course, have their own legislative agendas, and as a body, they have their legislative agenda. Our work with the CBC is to provide policy and research information and to make recommendations about what we are learning, what our fellows and researchers are developing, and that's then for them to assess it and be thoughtful then about the legislative decisions and recommendations they are making. So I would urge you and encourage you, and I'm sure they would want to talk to you about how they are centering AI and how they are dealing with it in terms of how they're responding to and being available to their constituents around that issue.
Well, and I'm glad to say that we're in conversation with many of your members on a regular basis here on Bloomberg, Nicole. Getting a sense of what else is important as we move forward here with the idea that the housing market is driving a lot of the economic challenges for Americans right now. You said something important. You're right. The black voter is not a monolith. But this, again, is an issue that impacts everybody, whether you're a black, white, Latino voter. Cracking the housing market is something that many young voters think is impossible, that they will never realize this. Are any of the proposals on the table that you're hearing about at the conference or on the campaign trail possibly able to unlock that?
Well, I will tell you, I am hearing lots of conversations about, one, centering that as a priority issue, because you're absolutely right. Young people and everyone in between is concerned about how can they afford to put a roof over the heads of their families? How can they buy into the American dream? And we know that home ownership is a way that we pass on generational wealth. And that is something that is particularly important to the Black community, especially since we know, based on data, that it's been very difficult for the Black community to pass on similar levels of wealth, generational wealth, to their families. So we are having conversations about that. And one of the things that we're doing is we're listening. This conference is not just about hearing from the elected leaders. It's about creating a space and a forum where voters, where everyday average citizens can be heard. That's something that is rare. When we have a town hall discussion like we just did this morning, we had a town hall discussion. It was a two-part discussion. First, where we talked about democracy and the issues that are at stake in our democracy. And then we had a second panel on Black wealth and how we close the Black wealth gap. One of the reasons we have a town hall is because a town hall concept is about not only sharing information, but about listening. One of the biggest things that leaders and elected officials can do is listen to what their constituents and community members are saying is important to them, what they're saying about what their needs are and what kinds of changes they want to see. So our conference is unique in that way. And we see that as our obligation. We see it as our obligation to provide a forum for leaders to stand up and speak to the constituents and community members, but we also see it as a place where those community members can stop legislators right here in our hallway. If you were here with me now, you would see there are people milling about all over the Washington Convention Center. You can see members that are going to pass you in the hallway. You have the opportunity to stop them and say, hey, Miss Legislator or Mr. Legislator, here's what I'm concerned about in my community. Here's what I'd like you to do. Or here's a thought that I have about something that we are already engaged in as advocates and grassroots workers in our community. That's the beauty of this conference. And again, I think that's what's going to help us create real movement and change. It's that dance, that delicate dance that has to be done between leaders, not only doing, but also being listeners and being empathetic and thoughtful.
Nicole, I only have a minute left, and I want to tap your expertise on election security. Something important happened yesterday. The January 6th certification of the election has been declared a national special security event. We will have voted by then. How worried are you about security in the next 2 months?
I will tell you, we do work here at the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation on voting, and I've spent my career as a civil and human rights lawyer specializing in and working on voting. I will tell you that we have one of the most secure voting systems in this country. There are so many experts around the country, and our research shows that, who work every day to ensure that our systems are working, that they are fair and free, and that they're equitable. And I believe in those systems. I think we all should.